You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
If there's one thing that consumers can unite on, especially in an election year, it's gas prices. They complain about gas prices, they love them, they hate them, and we know that both parties coming in November will probably have something to say about what you're paying at the pump. So NACS actually has a lot of resources available on our website that can help explain the dynamics of this complex and often very complicated market. And on the flip side of that, these resources can also help convenience retailers tell this story to their customers. So we will take that monkey off your back. And to talk about it today is our usual host for Convenience Matters, and that's Jeff Lenard, who really doesn't need much of an introduction. So hi, Jeff.
Hi, Chrissy. Good to see you again, like every other day.
So Jeff, you've been at NACS for over 2 decades, 23 years, I believe.
24, and you're at
24.
19. So we've done this a lot together.
We have. And I've been at NACS for 19 years. And my first entry into the industry was the one of Hurricane Katrina.
Yes.
And I learned about a new word that year called gouging. So we'll get back to that, but those are just some of the intricacies of this market, of the retail fuel market that I've learned over the years and that are super important to communicate to convenience retail customers. So one of the things you do too is that you talk to reporters. You talk to anyone who calls you and wants to learn more about what's going on, particularly around instances of, record high gas prices, pipeline shuts down, gouging, all those good things. So can you tell us, what are you hearing now? Is it quiet? Are there any concerns out there? What's going on?
Always concerned because you never know what's going to come next. But you're absolutely right. When we started, you started 19 years ago, me a couple of years before that, but about 19 years ago was one of the first major bursts of attention related to gas prices. With Hurricane Katrina, gas prices hit $3 a gallon for the first time. We had people that previously had allowed pump first, pay later, lock down their pumps because everybody was stealing. And we did not coordinate this as a topic, but I just happened to get out a letter I got. This is an email I got right around that time. And it's from this guy named Wild Bill. And the subject says,
Wild and Crazy Bill.
But Bill apparently thought I was crazy because the subject says, quit lying about gasoline profits. Why lie and say that gasoline prices make 1 cent per gallon? No one likes an obvious liar. Stations want me to entice them so they can make 15 cents on my fill up. And then he asked me if I'm mentally ill. And then he questions my looks. And he finishes by saying, wake up, idiot.
People get fired up over gas prices.
So Wild Bill, it wasn't wrong about the looks, but he was wrong about the industry. And it really has taken that long to have the Wild Bill be the exception.
Right.
And when you look at the various points where we really had an incredible amount of media interaction, it was in those early couple of years where we would tell this industry story about gas prices, and you'd hear from Wild Bill, you're an idiot, you're not mentally competent. And that peaked in probably 2008 when gas prices hit a then record $4.05 a gallon, for something a gallon. We had something like 700 or 800 media calls in a given year, and 220 work days in a year. So it was 3 or 4 calls a day. Sometimes it was 10 a day, and it was all high level. It was, why are gas prices doing this? Why are you making all this money? What we're seeing today is entirely different. And it feels like the Maytag repairman in a way, if you remember those old commercials where we built it right, so we don't hear as much from people now. And it is, when I say we, it's the industry. I was at the WPA conference last week, and Jesse Waters with Fox News was on stage. And I wrote down one of his lines. He says, I know you guys make only 10 cents a gallon selling fuel. And that's an awesome statement. Whether the WPMA staff prepared him, whether he heard it, however he found out that information, he believed it enough to repeat it. And that just tells you where our industry is. Now, we used to make 1 cent a gallon. That used to be the industry average. It's closer to 10, 15 now. But the fact is we are not blamed the way we used to. And they tend to ask us more about what's causing the rise in prices, not why are you guys causing the rise in prices?
Right. Yeah, I think that misperception of retailers just arbitrarily setting a price however they want to set it has been dispelled over the years.
Yeah. And when we first started, you set it up at the beginning perfectly. It's like, we realized we were getting a lot of phone calls. We realized that our members were getting a lot of harassment. So why don't we build something that works for both? And in those first early years when we built out what we called the gas price kit, and I think the first one was 2002, something like that. The underlying message is we're not gouging. And let's just explain a little bit about the industry and let's explain who makes profits. It's evolved from there quite a bit, where we're also explaining here's what the profits situation is, but we're looking at different things. We're looking at telling fun stories, so you get a little behind the scenes, and it also shows that we're very capable of explaining the issue because we're capable of explaining all these other related issues. Going back to those early days, we used to have a mailing that went out every 2 weeks to members. And that was before the magazine. And we mailed a bunch of random stuff together. And what we would have in those early years was we would have payroll stuffers that here's a message that you can stick in your next payroll to your employees so they can understand what's going on with gas prices. They can explain to their family. They can explain to their friends. And most of all, they can explain it to the wild bills of the world. So we started with that. And it's just evolved. It's electronic. All the information that you and I cobble together, revise, refresh, shine up. We used to put out this information every February 2nd. And the idea was it was Groundhog Day. And if you remember that very fun movie, this thing happens over and over again. Tagline was, it's just like that movie with boutique fuels. The same thing happens over and over again because that's the way the system's set up. That's why we have this spring transition. But, that movie's gotten a little bit in the rearview mirror. And we also noticed, you and I, we just wouldn't hear anything. We'd spend a lot of time in January. We'd put this thing together. And then when it would get released January or February 2nd, there'd be a thud.
Yeah.
And it was because we were ahead of the spring transition. We wanted to explain that this is about when the spring transition starts, but people don't start getting concerned about gas prices until they go in and the price of their fill up is more than it was last time. That's when they all of a sudden pay a whole bunch of attention. And that's why we're putting it out at the end of February. But all these tools are all online now and they're updated for this year. And that's why we do it. It's to share it with the media. It's to share it with anybody that is an opinion leader. And it's built for retailers to also take pieces of it and use it to explain whatever they need to on their local level.
Yeah. I mean, I think back in those days, we were a little bit ahead of, I guess, what you would consider SEO on a website these days, or even like a basic Google search, right? Like they usually start with like why or how or when. And so I remember we asked customers just some of the questions that they had on camera, and then either you or John Eichberger and I think Tom Kloza, I think it was three of you, actually answered those questions. And honestly, if anyone's listening to this, you can probably still find those videos online somewhere. They do exist. But, and it was dispelling those myths. It was like, why is gas priced one thing on this corner and then another thing on that corner? Why do gas prices, tend to increase in the spring, which you just talked about was the transition. And I think one of the more popular ones, since we had mentioned that we're in election year again, was, does the president control gas prices?
Yes.
And the answer is no.
Yes. So first off, going back to those videos, the concept was explain it in 60 seconds or less.
Yeah.
And those that know me know that's kind of difficult. It's impossible for Tom or John to summarize in 60 seconds. So shout out to their inability to keep it under a minute.
Yeah.
But it was SEO before SEO was something, because it was all those questions. And one day we were sitting around, 2 years ago, and it was just people don't get it. The president doesn't control gas prices. And he told me, well, we need a new blog, write it.
Yeah.
So that was the headline. We went through and we looked at how much do gas prices go up in a presidential election year compared to the other years? Does a president ever leave office with gas prices being lower than when the president started? And the answer to both those questions is no.
Well, you looked at 24 years of data.
Yeah. So it was basically this century. So we didn't go back to Martin Van Buren or something like that. We went back to the year 2000, we went back about as far as EIA data could go. But does the president control gas prices? I have gotten similar Wild Bill-like responses from both people that are leaning left and
politics.
people that are leaning right. So one of the good things was it said it was written right because there was objection to how it was written on both sides. But you're the one that tracks on social media, and you'd come in and you'd say, did you see how many people viewed this today? I mean, it just went off the charts.
Yeah. It still is one of the top viewed pages on our website.
But last time...
You compete with that one in the store count.
But it's over 500,000, right?
Yeah, easily.
Well, that's not bad. It's a slow day in the convenience store industry, but it's a pretty big...
it could pick up. We're not in the thick of it yet, but we will be in a few months. So never know.
That's under the Convenience Corner blog, and it's also under the Fuels Resource Center.
Right. Fuels Resource Center, for those who want to find it quick and easy, convenience.org/fuels. That's the shortcut to get there pretty quickly. So we have all these resources. We have a magazine. We have NACS Magazine. We have Fuels Market News. We have NACS Daily, which every day we put in the average retail gas price. We put in whatever the WTI oil price was for the day, whatever it settled on. What are other ways that you are aware of, whether through us or through other resources, that people can find information on gas prices quickly?
Well, we're pretty good at it. There are other groups at it.
I think give someone else some props, but we're pretty good at it.
One of the things we also have done is we cite a lot of NACS state of the industry data, but more important, we want to show that our metrics are not made up. And of course, anybody in the industry knows they're not made up. But so we work with Opus, and we use a lot of Opus numbers. We use a lot of numbers looking at supply and demand and issues like that using the U.S. Energy Information Administration, which is part of DOE. They come out with all kinds of great information. The short-term energy outlook is like a nerd's dream that comes out every month. And you can look up all just incredible data and charts. And so we try to track that and explaining where imports come from, et cetera. For what it's worth, we're at all-time highs in energy production in this country. Roughly, the world uses about 100 million barrels a day and produces about 100 million barrels a day. And so when you get these little imbalances, we try to explain, here's what happens. It's not like if demand increases by 1%, it doesn't mean a 1% increase in prices. It means, kind of think of it like eBay auction or hot auction anywhere. If there's a lot of people looking for something that's limited in supply, or the stock market, same thing, prices go up. Nobody can predict, but that's the way it works. So just explaining how the system works and what happens in the spring and what is that spring transition and what is that 24-year run this century, and what does it look like, and why did we get here?
Yeah.
And the answer is not the retailer, because when prices go up, usually bad things happen at the retail level. Margins shrink. You have people with less money spending more of it on the same amount of liquid, so they're less able to buy all those awesome things you have inside the store. And then you have people complaining. So nobody wants that if you're a retailer. And just how do you explain that story? We also use a lot of AAA numbers and, of course, work with NIQ in terms of, you mentioned the store count, just numbers related to that. So the most respected energy analysts in the country, we rely on them as much as NACS data to say, here's what's going on out there and here's why it matters.
Yeah. And we've been at this for over 2 decades, right? And I think all of the stuff that you have mentioned puts NACS and our members in a really great position to be proactive rather than reactive, right? Because every day it's like you're one crisis away from something in the market causing everything to go haywire.
Yeah, and the other thing is, for any retailers out there or suppliers out there, that these are all very shareable. You overseeing, how do we tell our story on social media? You use bytes over time to get the word out. But feel free to share these resources, link to them on your websites, use them in social media, share them with reporters, because I find one of the things when say I'm not able to answer a call and the reporter says, hey, sorry, I missed you. I'm sending you an email, but could you call back? First thing I do is if I understand what the topic is, I'll send them directly to one of these backgrounders we have. Sometimes I'll even get, do you mind if I quote you? I don't know if I need to talk anymore.
Right.
So, which is awesome. We're all vain. We always like to see our names quoted. But if somebody conveys the message, like I said, with Jesse Waters saying, I know you guys only make 10 cents a gallon, who cares? Our jobs are to communicate the industry's image, and these tools help do that. So make sure you take a look at them and let us know the ones you like. Let us know the ones that we can enhance, and let us know the ones that ain't there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You right on that main landing page, convenience.org/fuels, your contact information's right there. So I would hope that if anybody browses through this stuff and says, hey, you're kind of missing the mark on this, or we'd really like to see something on this, please reach out and let us know. And because this stuff is super important to communicate to customers, how the market works. And I think, fortunately, over the years, hopefully we've done a really good job of getting that information in the hands of people who want it. And of course, with, we mentioned SEO, it's certainly searchable by whatever folks are searching on. And we always try to stay on top of that as well. What are the hot topic issues when it comes to retail fueling?
Yeah, and they're always concerned about what they put in their tank and how much they paid for that. So we develop some things that are not common questions, but trying to share some of the resource. When we write something, whether it's for the magazine or whether it's for NACS Daily or whether it's for Fuels Market News, some of that stuff can be repurposed and shared with a broader audience. So we have some information about how did 9/10 pricing come to be, because you always have somebody say, well, gas prices are too high, but why do they have it at 9/10 of a gallon? That's got to be another conspiracy. Yeah. Kind of walk through that. It has to do with the founding fathers, by the way. So blame them.
Well, right. The answer isn't, because it's always been that way.
They created mill pricing. So those guys with the tricorn hats, it's their fault. They created the half penny. They created all that other stuff. So there was pricing that was below a penny, and it still exists because of that first Continental Congress. We look at how first real modern full serve in 1964, coming up on the 60th anniversary. I think you can make the argument that led to where we are today with how people are able to get what they want when they want it, not just at the mall, not just inside the store with self-serve gas, self-serve soda fountain, self-checkout, etc., but would the internet exist?
Yeah.
How do you teach people how to shop for themselves if they didn't already know how to shop for themselves? So it's cool in some of the other ways where we've just led, and those are cool dynamics to be able to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, people, for the most part, most people love to drive, love their vehicles, want to take care of it. And, we talked about store count. There's, I'm going to botch it, over 152,000 as of the end of last year, right? You probably had the exact one.
I cheat. I have it right in front of me for reporters. 152, 396.
And how many of those stores, and this is NIQ TD Links data that we have.
I have to turn
how many of those sell gas?
120,061.
And how many transactions a day in a convenience store in the US?
The industry about 160 million. So half the US is on some level conducting a transaction at a convenience store.
It's a lot of fuel.
Yeah, well, that's another one. We try to simplify things, and we try to have also some media-friendly graphics or social media graphics that we've used in the past. And you look at EIA data, Energy Information Data, Administration data. There's 8.8 roughly now million barrels of gasoline consumed a year. Now, you mention that to analysts, they get it, they understand it, you understand it, I understand it. People have no idea how much is in a barrel of oil.
Right.
So first off, you got to educate that there's 42 gallons in a barrel of oil. So then you kind of say, okay, well, that's 1 divided by 42 is 2.4. So when a barrel of oil goes up by $1 or down by $1, that's 2.4 cents. So then you can start explaining things like that. And it's like, whoa, that's interesting. And saw something the other day. Somebody reported, it was on a different website, said on any given day, fill up 40 million times a year. And it's like you go to convenience.org/fuels, and I'm pretty sure that's the first thing we have up there.
It is. It's in the first paragraph.
Yeah. So
I think it's the first sentence, actually.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
And that means that we're credible enough as an organization, as an industry, and a collection of members who sell fuel that they listen to us.
Yep.
Now, it's a 20-year battle, and you're only as good as today's headlines, but it's a lot of people pulling in the same direction saying, let's complain about them getting it wrong, but let's give people the tools to get it right.
Yeah. And, you go in for that fill up. The next step is go inside the convenience store and buy things, eat things, drink things. There are so many great experiences to have inside a C-store other than just pulling up and conducting that weekly or bi-weekly fill up. Go see what else is in there, because we've been on the road a lot. We've filled up a lot of gas tanks and eaten a lot of food and checked out a lot of new, interesting convenience stores. And the full court press experience goes from the pump inside the store, in my humble opinion.
See, I see what you did there. Full court press, full forecourt press. I see that.
There you go.
Very good. Yeah. And so again, as Chrissy said, go to convenience.org/fuels. The resources are there. My face is there. You can look and say, Wild Bill was wrong. He looks marginally mentally.
Or he was completely correct.
He's completely correct. And let us know what you think of us without, being hurtful. And how can
I'm still convinced Wild Bill was like a practical joke on you. I'm sorry.
No, there was an employee 19 years ago that was new and probably thought she could get away with it.
I'm not Wild Bill.
I just have to look and
come up with a creative name than that.
I just have to go back and find out who had a Yahoo account back then and just do some.
Everybody.
Yes, I know. So if you're Wild Bill, I'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, please call.
But if you're not Wild Bill and you ever come by the NACS offices, I do have it framed. You can read it word for word, and you can read how exactly he slings those insults at me.
Well, there you go. Well, Jeff, thank you for answering the questions perhaps on some people's minds, maybe everybody. And it's always fun talking about fuels and all the great stuff that goes on in our industry. And thank you, everyone, for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.